Welcome to the latest episode of the best of Cool Culture Corner. We look back at early episodes of the podcast Cool Culture Corner and apply the principles to today in a pandemic, hopefully soon to be post-pandemic world, uh, land of divisiveness and political issues and all types of other business and team building challenges of today. I am Ken Bader, your host for both the best of Cool Culture Corner and the podcast Cool Culture Corner. And we look back to episode 24, which was on succession planning. In fact, I will call this particular episode Succession Planning as a Mentoring Tool, because that's exactly what I believe it is if you look at it at its best and purest form. And I also obviously talked about that in episode 24, all the way back in December of 2016, almost 5 years ago. Wow, time flies. But I made some specific points about how succession planning isn't just simply writing a couple of pages or putting together a document that you can hand to the board or the regulator or investors, especially private investors or your family if it's a family-owned business or what have you. It's much more than that. And I want to make three specific points that go back to that particular episode. But before I do that, let's listen to the sometimes clunky early episode of Cool Culture Corner.
Our subject today is succession planning, especially from a culture standpoint, because one, I've seen a number of smaller organizations and small businesses really struggle when the owner or CEO or head manager is getting to that point where they want to retire, or they want to get away from the business, whether it's a family business that's been around 10, 20, 30 years, or maybe an organization that's smaller with about 30 or less people that may be around for a number of decades. It seems that a lot of these smaller businesses have a real difficult time handing the ball off to somebody else. And it's not because the owner or CEO necessarily doesn't want to hand the ball off. Many times they do. They want to leave a legacy, of course, and leave the business in good shape to somebody else. But they want to get on that horse and ride off into the sunset and know that they're leaving that place not only better than when they found it or when they started it, but also in as good or better hands than they had. And what's difficult is that in so many situations I see, because there hasn't been an active thought to succession planning and training somebody and grooming somebody and mentoring somebody for that head role, there's a real difficult problem in the CEO or owner not being able to hand that business off to somebody that's capable. One of my clients that I'm working with right now has that problem. She wants to retire in about 4 years or so. And despite, a really, really strong culture and some really good staff members that have been there for a long time and not only do good work, but also truly do care about the business and the people that they serve. But there's no one there that she feels comfortable handing the reins off to. In fact, that makes her very nervous. And I've seen this with some family businesses, one in particular not too far away from my home that's been around for years and years and years. They were even on one of those popular shows, one of those turnaround shows. We went in there. It was a restaurant. And I remember going in, I want to say at least a year or two ago, and the food being average at best, and that's probably being kind, But more so, it seemed that the family, the younger folks there, just didn't want to be there. So, for a lack of having somebody to hand the reins off to, this very long-standing restaurant business literally just closed, almost out of the blue. I think it announced that they were closing, and I want to say a month or two they were done. Which is really unfortunate, because even with some of the problems they had, somebody that was really groomed to run that business, that had the true passion for it, could have really done some great things with it. So, what's the solution? Well, this is Cool Culture Corner, so we've got to talk about succession plan in terms of culture building. And one of the best examples I ever saw actually came from, I'd say, close to 20 years ago. I was working for a $4 billion financial institution in the late 90s in the Chicagoland area. And the CEO and management, because of the regulator, was in essence forced to do a succession plan for that institution, for that business. And, a lot of times, especially in the financial industry or the healthcare industry, where there's a lot of regulation, when a regulator, somebody from the outside who you rarely ever like anyway, is telling you how to run your business and telling you have to do something, it's usually met with not only a negative emotion, but many times a negative response. I've seen it many, many times where the attitude is, well, we'll get this done just to get this guy or gal off our back, but we really don't want to do this. But this particular place that I worked, kudos to the CEO, because the thing that he said to management is, well, if we're going to do it, let's do it right, and let's use it as the foundation for a training tool. And we did just that. And I thought, that was a great example, and one obviously that I carry with me for almost 2 decades. In that we did fill out some paperwork, and of course some of it was confidential, because we didn't want one person to necessarily know that we didn't have them on a succession plan for a next for a promotion later on, or for another position, because we didn't feel they were right for the job. But really, what we did was we went through and talked about every single position, what that particular position and role needed. And then we looked within the staff and said, regardless of what department they're in, or what their degrees are, or what have you, let's look at what their reviews have been and what their skill set is, and let's see, in each particular role and position, who might be the 2 or 3 best people to take over that role should the person in the current role leave. And then what we also did was we truly did use it as a training and mentoring tool, which I think was a big positive for our culture there, is the manager sat down with each of his subordinates, or better yet, each team leader of each department sat down with each of his valuable staff people. I hate to think of it and talk about manager to subordinate. It sounds so cold, but really, in a mentoring standpoint, or from a mentoring attitude, the manager sat with each of his or her staff people and talked about what are your goals within the organization? Where would you like to go? Where do you think your skills really apply in this particular organization? Because for some people, they're really good at what they do, and they want to have a career path just within that particular role, which is fine. Some people just love doing accounting. Some people just love working with the customer. Not everybody wants to be a supervisor or manager of a department or people. Maybe that's not their true desire. But there are some, of course, that do have that desire and do want to lead people, do want to run a department, do want more responsibility within the organization, maybe even want that CEO role and so forth. But the real key, and this is what helps to create a cool culture corner, is understanding what each individual really wants and also understanding what their skills are. So going back to the very original reason for this particular podcast and our conversation today of if you are a business owner or CEO and you're looking to retire in about 3 to 5 years and you do have that information in terms of what people really want to do and how they want to move up in a particular organization and how they want to build their career, and also know what their skill set is. If those two things are aligned, that's great. But if they're not aligned or they're just slightly misaligned, the value of succession planning and going through that process is, all right, we may have 1, 2, 3, maybe more people that want this top role. Well, looking at the skill set, this person may be the best suited, but he really needs to work on his people skills. Or maybe you have somebody that's a really great leader of people, but has a real issue in digging into the granular of the business and needs to at least learn it and understand it enough, even though somebody else may be doing that part of the business, but needs to understand it enough to be able to truly run that business. But when you understand the skill set and the wants of somebody, and you're trying to truly mentor and grow them and train them into a particular role, then you have something of value and could truly set yourself up, and more important, your business or organization up for leaving that business in better hands when you want to leave. So I encourage you to not only do succession planning, regardless of the size of your business, but to do it in a way that truly mentors and helps all of the people in your organization.
So what can we apply today? Now, I truly believe very passionately that from a mentoring standpoint, we need that more today than any other time. I believe that in one way, shape, or form, teams have gotten beat up. Whether it's just simply working from home and not being able to engage with each other, whether it's furloughs, people that have gotten let go and are coming back, or you're putting together some type of mix in your service-based business where there are a few people that hung on and are still with you and they're the loyal ones, and then you got to bring in some brand new people and try to make this team work. I think that mentoring, not just management, but true leadership and mentoring was never more important than it is today. And I think that succession planning is a great tool to do that. And I talked about that in episode 24. First, I think we have to come up with the mindset and embrace the mindset, which is probably a better way of putting it, that whether it's a privately owned, maybe family business, or say a credit union. In fact, my motivation to pick this particular episode is I was just speaking to one of my former credit union clients that recently got bashed because their CEO is leaving. Their board basically threw the CEO under the bus. That CEO basically said, "See ya," which I completely agree with. And the NCUA, their regulator, bashed them for management in that they have absolutely no succession plan. And that particular credit union, in one way, shape, or form, probably will die in the near future. And that's unfortunate, if for no other reason, for the members that rely on that particular credit union. But that's just one thing that just pounds into my head how important succession planning is. It goes beyond just the requirement to do succession planning. I truly believe if we're going to build our organization, we have to plan for our retirement, our exiting from that business, whether it's, again, family owned or a publicly held organization and so forth. So I think we need to come with the mindset of, I want that next CEO, owner, ultimate leader to take this and have it be in good hands, and to take it to the next level and have that organization be in even better hands. Have that individual learn from your mistakes as well as what worked. I think we need to come with that mindset and understand that, at some point we're not going to be around in this world, but our business can leave, but our business can live on. And whose hands do we want that to be in? And we have some control over that. Also, I mentioned, kind of interesting, I mentioned in that episode back in 2016, that restaurant that was family owned for decades, and then had closed down right around the time that I recorded that episode. Obviously, it's been gone now for 5 years. And the irony is I can't even remember the name of that restaurant. I'm not even not saying the name because I'm trying to protect the business. I can't even remember the name of the place. And that just reminds me that life goes on. If the business dies, nobody really cares. People move on with their life. So all the more reason to make sure that we are mentoring somebody to take that business and go beyond even what we thought it would be through succession planning. And the last point that I want to make is, obviously it's a training and mentoring activity. As I talked about that particular business from way back when that thought of it that way. And I think that even in the smallest pieces of mentoring and training, that we could bring on succession planning. Yeah, in fact, one of the biggest tools that I promote in terms of culture building is one-on-ones. And I think if we come with those one-on-ones, or to those one-on-ones, with a succession planning mindset of how can I mentor this individual to either A, one day take my place and do a better job than I'm doing, or even, sometimes succession planning is understanding that that person may not be here very long. That doesn't mean that we don't mentor them and help to make that individual an even better person someplace else someday. It does mean that we have to make sure that the people that are going to be doing well someplace else are understood, and that we know those folks, but also the folks that we know may eventually be in a leadership position in this organization will be mentored and taken care of, and be in a position where possibly even at a moment's notice, a leader can take over and do just as well, if not better, than we're doing with that particular business. So again, think of succession planning not as a rote activity, but as a mentoring tool. And here's hoping, as always, that you have a cool culture corner at your unique business. Take care.
Now a word from our sponsor, Bader Training and Consulting. BTC is the creator of the B plus C plus S formula. Our clients that implement that formula increase their net income by 124% and grow their business by 17% on average. The best place to start working with Bader Training and Consulting is with our B plus C plus S audit. The service pinpoints issues as well as attributes of your business's unique brand, culture, and strategy. Learn more or sign up for a B plus C plus S audit at www.btcinc.net/BCS-audit.